You're listening to Porn Free Masculinity, where you connect to your recovery and your destiny.
Hey everybody, welcome back to The Mirror with Chris and Rob. Rob, how you doing today?
Awesome. It's great to be with you, Chris.
Great to be with you, my friend. Glad your travels are over and you're back with us. And today, I think what we want to talk about is this idea about rock bottom. If you've talked about rock bottom or coming to the end of yourself or the valley of the shadow of death, or if you want to bring a scriptural reference, you can talk about being poor in spirit. Now, where is this place that we really finally come to a place of acceptance and surrender of our own brokenness? And we're really experiencing the place where growth can actually begin, where healing and honesty can actually begin. When you hear that, think about that, what comes up for you?
Yeah, gosh, that's so good. I say so good because I experienced it. It was important. It had to happen for me. And as I walk with other guys, I can just see it. Like I can even see it more clearly where guys are still trying to figure out when are they going to really take this whole process seriously.
Yes.
When are they going to take ownership for it? And this is like the process I had to go through. And I'll never forget the moment for me. I think if I'm being really honest, I hadn't hit rock bottom for a lot of reasons. 4.5, 5 years into recovery.
Yep.
Because I was doing it for a lot of reasons that were not related to me.
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
I mean,
Totally get it.
Doing it. I think I've shared this with your listeners before. I was doing it for my family. I was doing it to stay married. Yeah. I was doing it.
Well, but isn't that where every guy starts? It's like, I got to fix everything around me because I'm the problem. I can't fix me. I've always been the problem.
Yes.
So let me get healthy for my wife or my kids or to stay out of legal trouble or to deal with financial issues or, external motivators are the things that get us moving initially, right?
Yeah. 100% agree. And I think even inside of that, that idea of external motivators is even another form of control, which is really kind of a root of addiction to begin with.
Absolutely.
If I could just control everybody else around me and avoid looking at me, it does two things. Number one, it keeps me in a spot where I've spent most of my life of controlling anything and everything around me, number one. And number two, it removes the idea that I'm the identified patient, which is part of my shame story, right?
Yes.
I already know that I'm the problem. I've known I was the problem since the day I started when I was 10.
Yes.
And yet at the same time, it's this idea of recovery for me started with, let me fix the things around me. Well, let's tinker with my heart along the way, but let's fix the things around me because at the end of the day, I wasn't really willing to look at the shame. I wasn't really willing to look at the deep parts of my heart and soul, which kept me from hitting rock bottom.
Yeah. So it sounds like, and tell me if you hear something differently, it sounds like that while I'm willing to give up some of my addictive process, I'm not willing to give it all up because I want to kind of still live life on my own terms. I want to still be able to manage. The magic word you used was control. I want to be able to control my dynamic. So if I just polish things up and shine it up a little bit and my behavior on the outside especially looks like it's improved, then, I'll feel better. Other people will be less frustrated with me. My circumstances will improve. And then maybe that'll just naturally roll into some form of healing.
Yes.
The classic initial meeting that I see when guys come to a meeting, whether it's any kind of recovery meeting, is, I'm really struggling with this particular behavioral issue, and I just need to be here for a few months and get things straight.
Yes, right?
Yeah.
And I want to double down on that because I was just reflecting on in this very thing in a conversation recently. I also wanted to go back to what I felt was comfortable.
Yeah.
And I didn't want the behavior. Like I wanted to stop the behavior, but I wanted to go back to a safe, comfortable life before I was found out.
Yeah.
And if I could do exactly what you just described, if I can make a few tweaks here and I can make a few changes there. If I could listen to a couple podcasts and read a couple of books, maybe I can get my family back to a spot where I'm accepted, nothing's wrong, and we've got this comfortable life. What I didn't realize at the time is just how much needed to be sacrificed in order for real change to exist.
Yep. Wow. And as I'm sitting here just thinking about it, I'm just going through all my stories of what I thought of was rock bottom. I mean, obviously, I've been fired before. That was pretty low. Had huge blow up fights with my wife. That was pretty low. But there's two things that really come to mind for me, which was the year that I got fired twice from my dream profession. I used to be in vocational ministry. I was a youth pastor. I got fired from 2 churches within a span of 9 months. Now, that's pretty impressive. And I'm one of those guys who show up at a church and works for like 3 weeks and then gets fired. That was where I was. And so that second firing really put me on my heels, both in what am I going to do vocationally? I'm not going back to this again. It's not safe. But also put me on my heels with where we were living, because I'd moved across state lines to take this new job. My family hadn't joined me yet. What do we do? So we retreat back to kind of home base, and I lived with my in-laws for a year. And so in that rock bottom, it feels, I called it the wilderness. And I think a lot of guys can resonate with that idea. And that experience of being in the wilderness, you feel like you can't do anything right, and you're willing to try and listen to a lot of different people, try different things. But there still wasn't the willingness to let go, very much like you're saying. I was still trying to make the best of a really shitty situation.
Yeah. And I know we covered this to a degree, but why do you think you weren't willing to let go at that moment?
I think for me, it was, I had not yet come to the place where my life had become unmanageable, as the AA literature or the essay literature says. Yeah. You know, I still had a thread of hope that I could manage this, just like we talked about. You know, there was a little bit of control. I had a few friends who were willing to help. Maybe I could find a job. Maybe I could. I ended up starting a landscaping business, which felt very, freeing to have my own thing that I controlled. It didn't go very well. I didn't make money at it for a couple of years, but it gave me that illusion of it's my thing, right? But ultimately, I think it was a lack of a willingness to be honest. Man, I struggled and still do at times struggle with just telling the truth because I believe in my shame that I'm not worth it. That I need to paint a picture, wear a mask, have an image of myself that can be acceptable, because if you really knew me, no, I'm unlovable. Yeah.
Man, that resonates so much. I had probably 2 moments that first one I thought was rock bottom. I was asked to move out of the house a year and a half into my recovery journey, maybe a year. And looking back, it was such a minor boundary. Like I was only literally a mile down the road or 2 miles down the road. I was allowed to come home on the weekends. But I remember that first week being away, just feeling just empty and devastated. I mean, the entire world of shame was just crushing me. In that moment because of what I had done. But the real rock bottom, and it's very much related to what you shared, came in September of 2019. For a whole host of reasons. I was I took a job just outside of Philadelphia. My family was living in Raleigh, North Carolina, and they were not coming with me.
Wow.
I was living on my own. I had entered into a 1-year intensive class that required a lie detector test to start. Okay. And in that moment, I was faced with, all of these truths and all of the pieces that I had been lying. Long and short of it is, I was faced with having to tell my spouse at the time that there was still truth that I was holding back.
Mm.
And it was coming, it's similar to you, it was coming from a very protected place of me wanting to be the good guy and me wanting to appear like I had it together. And there's no other way to describe it other than just being a self-protected place.
Yeah.
I wasn't interested in protecting her or the marriage. I was more interested in protecting me because of what I was hiding. And in September, after sharing, kind of facing that lie detector test and having to then come clean right afterwards, because I actually had to come clean during the lie detector test so that I could actually fulfill it. The words came something like this: "You are not allowed to come back home."
Ooh.
And I don't want to talk to you.
Mm.
And I'll never forget in that next week or two that kind of preceded that. I remember being in this 1-bedroom apartment above a law office in the tiny town of Harleysville, Pennsylvania. I didn't know a soul in town.
Wow.
And I'm 8 hours away from my family, not allowed to come home. And I was on my knees at the bedside, just crying and crying and crying. And I said this, I said, Lord, everything that I've tried to accomplish, anytime that I've tried to take control or ownership of this process, has ended up in failure.
Yeah.
And right now it's just me and it's just you.
Yeah.
And I give it all up. Like I give up, and I need you to step in and help guide me. And that was it, Chris. I mean, that was really it. That set the foundation for a whole host of recovery activity that has become, helped me become who I am today. But I will tell you this: I will for certain, if I had not found that moment, if my wife had not made that decision in that moment to protect herself, I'm not sure if I would have continued, or I'm not sure if I would have ever let go of self-protection and still trying to hold on to these little corners of my life of, well, I'll share 95%, but not this 5, or I'll share 85%, but not this 15. I was still living a very self-protected life until I hit rock bottom.
Yeah, Rob, that sounds lonely and it sounds fearful, except for that moment when you knelt down and cried out. And, when I talk about the word surrender, I hear faith in that experience. You said, I think, and that's what rock bottom really does for us, is it allows us to begin to believe in a place that we had fearfully avoided and, shamefully avoided for, I would argue, our lives. And that we get to that place of, I've got nothing else. For me, it was a few years after that original kind of rock bottom that I was, and just very vulnerably, I was in the middle of having an affair. And, that place of desperation, that place of, when I was acting out with this other woman, there really was thrill, excitement, but at the same time, so much shame. That was the one thing I vowed I would never do. I vowed I would never do that. That's what my father had done in my life with my mom, and what split up my family. And here I was in the same situation. And I wasn't ready to cry out in the moment of realizing that I had come there, because it was a very pointed moment of kind of making that affair of a physical reality. But shortly afterward, and I think if we are really joking ourselves, God is with us in the midst of this place. Because a few short weeks after I had consummated this affair, I was in Canada, of all places, on a men's retreat with about 25 other guys in Banff, Canada. And we were supposed to sit around and share where we were. 25 guys. And there was a little plastic bag with a bunch of names in it. And the very first night, the leader opens up that bag and picks a name out. And guess whose name it was? It's my name. And so God said, all right, Chris, this is rock bottom. You have a choice. Do you want to be honest, or do you want to continue to hide? And I greeted him with an expletive. I was like pissed off that I'd been put in this situation to have to make that decision. But I mean, by this point, I was several years into what we call recovery. Obviously, I was not recovering because I was still acting out. But in that recovery, I had seen enough and felt enough that I knew this was the only path forward for me. So I told my story, and frankly shocked a number of the guys in the room who had no idea that's what was going on in my life at that point in time.
Yeah.
And they loved me. They received me. To that whole week, it was a week-long trip. Man after man came to me, loved me, told me their story, invited me into a place of grace. I went on a hike up a 7,500-foot peak, tallest mountain I've ever climbed, and almost exhausted my body. But in that experience, God was like, this is what I have for you if you want to keep walking this path. There's great things ahead. It was 6 guys on a mountaintop, beautiful Canadian Rockies. This is what you can have. You just have to be honest. You just have to tell the truth. And so that was the place where it led me into coming back home and disclosing to my wife and going to therapy and being physically separated for months and months and months to heal the marriage. But frankly, it was first to heal myself. Let me put a fine point on that. I had to do this work before the marriage had any hope. But it took, for me, getting to the place of mirroring my father's own woundedness in my life to be able to say, is this what you want, Chris? And God offering me an olive branch. Say, you have a choice. And that's the choice that I've made. It's the choice that I've continued to walk on. Not been easy, not been perfect. You know, I can't say, I can say I've been sober from acting out physically since that time, thank God. Other struggles still remain, as they always will. But for me, there really has been that rock bottom was a watershed moment of faith. I began to believe.
I hear what I hear you saying, and the theme that I'm hearing between both of our stories of hitting rock bottom is that we ultimately had to make a choice to empty ourselves of ourselves so that something could be placed inside or filled inside in replace of what was there. And it's a hard place to get to. It's also a beautiful place to get to.
Yeah. Yep.
Because it's at that moment that the hard work can really start to take root. And so I'll leave with encouragement, you know, as guys are listening today, what is it going to take? I don't know, but I really would ask each of the men to take a step back and say, where am I at? Where am I still living self-protected inside of my journey? And is that a place I need to ultimately let go of?
Yep. I'm with you. And if telling that story is a way that you can let go of it, let's do it. Rob and I both are convinced that telling my stories, and frankly, I'm going to tell the story of that experience to some very close friends tomorrow. So when you listen to this, it will have already happened because I need to be vulnerable about that. Now, I'm talking with safe people. I'm going to share them with people who can reflect back to me what they hear and help me heal, because even years and years later, there's still a shame wound there. I made a vow I would never do this, and I did it anyways. So it's part of my recovery. The behavior is not there. The acting out behavior is not there, but the emotion. And guys, this work is about emotion. One 1,000%. I acted out because I didn't know what to do with my emotions. In order to become integrated and heal, I have to go back and process through those emotions. So, Rob, right now I'm feeling very connected to you and a lot of admiration for you and your willingness to go there and encourage the guys to do that work. And I'm so grateful I get to do that work with you too.
Back at you. Thank you for your vulnerability today. And it's because of that I feel exactly the same way. Super connected.
Awesome, brother. Let's keep walking. Talk to you soon, my friend.
Thanks, Chris.
Take care, guys.
Don't forget to subscribe for more episodes. You can connect with Chris at pornfreemasculinity.com.